is a Rat alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Oh, for 5 years. 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Typically streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Telegram, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim, and today is March the 24th, 2023, and this is episode 278 of the Workshop Podcast. So you are getting this one. This is a pre-recorded episode because I am going to be on Liberty Late Night with Dave and Mary tonight. So if you're listening to this in time, Friday night, tune in to their YouTube channel. Always a lot of fun. Let's get a couple of announcements out of the way. First off, Patch of the Month Club. If you guys are looking for a way to get some pretty cool swag, get on a super secret email list, and support the stuff that I put out there, patchofthemonth.co. You get a patch every month, hence the name. $10 a month, $100 a year. We do Lightning, PayPal, or silver, whatever, even barter. I love the idea of coming up with some ideas that way. Number 2, the end of April, I am going to be at the Living Free in Tennessee Spring Workshop. Don't know if Nicole has any tickets left or not, but it is an incredible event, and if you guys are looking to it's just great. It's the first event I ever went to where we met all of our imaginary internet friends, and when we left, like I've said many times, Becky and I both said we finally found our community. So, can't wait. I'm going to be speaking on killing the poverty mindset. It'll be a great time, get to catch up with some old friends, and hopefully make some new ones. And finally, the end of May, I'm going to be at the Thrivalist Fair in Addy, Washington. That's Sunday, May 28th and May 29th. $50 for the entire weekend for a whole family. And if you're Canadian and you want to come down from across the border, they're taking Canadian dollars at par, which is like 12 cents American. That's incredible. And just announced the other day, Paul Wheaton is going to be there speaking as well. So go to Thrivalist, that's THRIVALISTS.org. And with that, guys, today's show is a recording of the presentation I was asked to give. About a month and a half ago, the local librarian, she puts on clinics or information sessions here in town. And she said, Tim, I heard you have, she called it a vlog, and wondered if you'd be interested in coming over and teaching about preparedness, because I'm nervous about food shortages and that sort of thing. And I was blown away. It was a huge honor. One of the coolest things I've done in my content creation journey yet was simply being able to share with my local community. I think we had about 17 people turn out, which was way better than I expected. And I just shared from the heart. Had a ton of good stuff. I explained to them it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. I didn't want to make it too complicated, but I wanted to get as much out there as I could. Looks like we're going to do a follow-up session, but there was enough interest. People said, hey, we'd love to hear your presentation, Tim. So I titled it Practically Prepared. So with that, guys, let's dive into today's show. So I'm Tim Cook from Provost. We've lived here for 10 years, almost 10 years, which is unbelievable. But so we've got 5 kids, and we've raised them successfully, so far. So we've kind of had to deal with the whole preparedness aspect, because we always wanted to make sure there was food in the cupboard and all of that. So first off, 3 things. So ask questions. If you guys want to know, ask questions. I don't mind. We'll stop and camp right on something the whole time, if that's what you guys want to do. I'm good with that. So I don't want it to be overwhelming. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you. It's going to be like drinking from a fire hose. I tried it once. It's not good. So just try. Yeah, I'll, if you need me to slow down or, but if you just take one thing from the presentation, all the better. So we'll start with that. And everything that I'm going to talk about is hopefully either cheap, free, or relatively inexpensive, because something like this shouldn't cost you more money, right? The whole idea about being prepared is to take fear away from you as opposed to add more stress of something else to do. So that's where we're going to head with it. If you guys want to know kind of who I am and what I do, well, I've been last couple of years, I've had a YouTube channel for 3 years and a podcast where I talk about, I call it Preparedness. So that's the art of home maintenance when help isn't around the corner. And it kind of grew bigger than I expected it to. So now I've been traveling. I was in North Carolina last year, Tennessee twice. I'm going to be in Washington this year, North Carolina, Tennessee 3 times to speak on this kind of stuff. So if you're wondering, does he know what he's talking about? No, but somebody thinks I do, so we're good. So anyway, there's a big old elephant over there in the room. I don't know. Oh, she looked good. I got somebody to look. So you guys remember that old TV show, Doomsday Preppers? I don't know, from National Geographic. And that's where everybody learned the word prepper from, right? So the word prepper's only been around since 1999. It was a word that was invented on the internet just before Y2K. People were getting prepared for Y2K. I dug into all this history a while back. It was fun. So that's not who I am. That's honestly not what your average prepper is. I don't even like the word prepper because it's like one of those words that has got a bad connotation nowadays, right? It's one of those things where people are like, I know you got a tinfoil hat, you live underground, and you have 10,000 rounds of ammo, and you love Donald Trump, right? That's it. I know it is. So, but it's not. So for us, what preparedness has always meant is our life, we try to do everything we can to make our life better if times get tough or even if they don't. It's the type of thing you prepare for the likely eventuality. Things that happen, like the other morning I was out blowing snow and I come up by Alex's house over there and the whole road is covered in water. So somebody woke up with a bad morning. That's the kind of stuff that we try to be prepared for, the common kind of stuff, you know? So again, like I said, the whole doomsday prepper thing, since at least 2,000 years, probably longer than that, people have said the world's going to end, the world's going to end. I mean, I'm 41 and I've lived through Y2K, 9/11, 2008 bank crisis, 2012, the Mayans. Everybody remember when the Mayans were supposed to, yep. And then there was something little happened about 3 years ago, 2020, and it slips my mind right now what it was. So when I used to do this, I used to say, we prepare for the everyday thing, not crazy, no, will never happen, like a worldwide pandemic, and then that happened, and now I can't use that line. So we're all set. But so fear itself, that's where people are like, oh, these people are scared, right? They're, you know, and a lot of people are like, okay, I go to the grocery store and I can't get my coffee, I can't get my chips, whatever it is. So we feel nervous. We're like, that's not normal. We should be able to go there, right? And so people are like, well, Tim, what can I do? Where do I go? What do I do with the fear of it, right? So fear is a really good short-term motivator. So a lot of people are like, hey, the power's out. I don't know what to do. I'm going to go buy a generator. And then when the power comes back on, what do you see on Facebook Marketplace a week later? Everybody sells their generators because they were scared, they spent some money, they fixed the problem. But a purpose, that is a great long-term motivator. So looking after your family, making sure that our toilet paper closet was always stocked so the kids never had to worry about toilet paper. That's the type of thing that a person can get behind, the practical, everyday prepping. So that's what we do. We have always, like I said, I don't even love that word. I mean, you know, I spoke at Prepper Camp last year, which is the largest outdoor prepper expo. So obviously I'm a prepper, but the word has these weird kind of things floating around it because of that, right? So like I said, everybody wants to spend money at something. They want to throw money at it and make my fear go away, right? But it's not what we do. We prepare long-term so that we are just a little bit better off in life. And so everybody, you know, a lot of times they're like, well, you know what, how do I start? Where do I go? You know, because somebody will come, they'll call you, they'll be like, I've been watching so-and-so on YouTube and he tells me tomorrow the banks are going to collapse, so it's too late. Well, when it comes down to it, the second best time to plant a tree is today, right? Of course, it would be great to have one of those big elm trees that we planted 50 years ago. But what else can you do? Start today, right? Put it in the ground. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the things that we can do to plant a tree today. That's where it starts with us. It's about the odds. So what a person does is they look at their life. They look at the things that they they do. We look at the, I don't want to say disasters, but the personal disasters that can happen to you. So a loss of a spouse, a job loss, a sickness, I hate like wildfires, a flooded basement, wake up to a water main break. That's the type of stuff that we look for, the things that are gonna end up hurting you. I used to say, the better chance of waking up with a flooded basement than a worldwide pandemic, right? Well, like I said, that kind of blew that line. But those are the things. We don't prepare for a meteor to hit us. We prepare for running out of food, or a year after we moved to Alberta, the worldwide price of oil collapsing, and all of a sudden my wife getting called in and laid off, right? That's the type of thing we prepare for to make our life just a little bit better. So when you go way back to when we very first started as, well, I don't know, we've been married 16, 17 years now, baby? Yeah. So we had the kids, and we always said we'd always make sure that we had food in the cupboard and toilet paper in the closet. And so we knew if we had 5, we were going to go through 5 packages in 2 weeks, we'd buy 6 or 7 to make sure, just in case something happened, And the family would always kind of joke, oh yeah, you guys have the toilet paper closet just in case zombies come or something like that, right? But it wasn't. That's what we had. We never once ran out of food, did we? Came close a couple times. We were absolutely broke as a joke many times, but we always made sure that our kids had food, and if they ever had to go to the bathroom, they had their toilet paper. That's all that really mattered to us, was making sure that our everyday life was just a little bit better. So, like I said, the things I'm going to throw at you, some of them will sail over you, some of them you'll grab a hold, and if you take one and you go home with it, I'm happy with that. So we'll go there. So the first thing we're going to start talking about is water. Now, I want to say water's free, but it isn't completely free because we still pay the town for the water. But we're already paying, no, it's good though, it's good. What I mean is it's an expense we already pay. We have water no matter what, right? So that's the first thing. So anybody know how much water per day you should have stored up for yourself, or how much water per day minimum somebody would use? Anybody want to guess?
Drinking or use?
Drinking and use, bare minimum.
Oh, crap. Okay, 1 liter for personal consumption.
Yeah.
Per person.
So maybe a gallon per person per day if you wanted to wash and cook your food is, yeah, it might be a little on the high side, but so if you had a family of 4, you need 4 gallons a day per day. 7 days, 28 gallons. So we'll call it 30 gallons. That's 6 5-gallon jugs of water. If you set that aside, that's all the water you need, just in case you wake up and all of a sudden I can't make my coffee because there's a water main break, which there's been 2 or 3 of them this week already. Yeah, I know. I see the look in the guys' faces. I feel bad for them. So it's not that bad. Now, the next thing is find space to store it. So, and yeah, space, right? But the cool thing about water is if it freezes, it's no big deal. You could store it out in a shed, store it in an unheated garage. I know lots of people who take 2-liter pop bottles and put them under their bed. It's just a spot to put. And the thing is, if you go and buy gallon water jugs, the first thing they want to do is break, right? They're made out of paper thin. Well, you see how thin those are, right? So save the 2-liter pop bottles. Those are great if you drink pop. And if you don't, ask a family member who does, wash them out, fill them up, and then you get yourself a place to store them. So that's a good spot. Or the big 5-gallon jugs. Go and get some of those, throw them under there, and you're good. 6 of them. And that's it. It doesn't cost anything. It's just water, right? Just fill it up. And town water, I mean, whatever, it's water. And what happens if you wake up and you can't flush the toilet, right? Nobody knows. You can just pour water into the bowl and the toilet will flush. But a lot of people don't always know that. So as far as water, that's the simple. That's where you start, and we work from there. Now, food. That's what Donna called me for, was food. She said a lot of people have messaged her and said food shortages. We're all, I think has it gotten better? I don't know. Do you guys think it's gotten better? Because for a while, it seemed like every week you went looking for something, it wasn't there, right? So there's not much you can do about going to the grocery store and them not having your favorite coffee or your favorite whatever. But what we can do is a well-stocked pantry. And if you do that ahead of time, at least we can curb off not having what we need to eat for our family down the road. So let's start. Anybody journal? Okay, good. I don't journal, but I have what'd you call it, an agenda? I've actually managed to use it every day for 3 months. That's been my New Year's resolution, was to make sure that I used an agenda. So what we're going to do is, anybody ever heard of, food journaling is what it is. It's like if you're on a diet, but you're not on a diet. All you're going to do, this is what we did when we first started. When you first start, every day, whatever you use, whatever you cook with, just write it in a journal. Every single day, for a week or for a month, however you want to do it. We're not doing anything other than writing it down. When you do that, first thing you're going to realize is, I ate 11 cans of ravioli last week. That is a lot of ravioli. So, but the thing is, when you ask people, if you asked me how many cans of Diet Coke I drank today, I'd probably say 2. But if I wrote it down, it'd probably be 5 or 6. So, right? Yeah, I know, it's not good. So, but that's the thing. We don't always realize what we eat or what we drink or whatever until we write it down. So we start out with what we call food journaling. Make a list of everything we need. And then from there, there's a thing called copy canning. And I didn't make up the term. I'm not even sure where I learned it. But what it is, and we've done this for years. If you go, so say we went and we saw on our journal that it was 10 cans of Chef Boyardee spaghetti, for instance, because that's what the kids like. I don't know, right? So you had 10 of those. So what we're going to do when we go to the grocery store next time is we're going to buy 11. So how much is a can of Chef Boyardee now? A couple of, 2, yeah, I know. It's more than it used to be, right? I know. So we'll wait till it's on sale if we can help it. But so how much do people spend on groceries now? What's an average trip to the grocery store, right?
150 to 200.
Right.
Every time I go with the kids, family of 4, it's the easy $700-800.
It's unreal, isn't it? I know. So none of this is getting any easier, but it's just the way it works. So 1 can of Chef Boyardee is $2.50. So maybe 1% of the total grocery bill. You're going to just don't buy a pop, or that's what the pop is at the register, right? So now you might say, well, that's not much. But if you repeat that every 2 weeks all year, all of a sudden you've done, what is that, 26? That's 26 extra cans if that's all you can afford, right? $2.50. But anybody you guys ever follow Dave Ramsey? So he has, what's his method called? I put her on the spot, I'm sorry. It's the snowball method, right? Yeah, so so you start with the smallest debt, you pay it off, and then you work. But he's an awesome guy. And so what he says is that it gets addictive. So when you pay off that first small debt, all of a sudden you're like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So then all of a sudden, what do? You go up to the next. You're like, maybe I can figure out how to buy 2 cans this time, right? And it doesn't mean you have any more money. It just means the more you do it, the more you're like, maybe we can buy just 1 extra can. And that's not a lot. 1 extra can, 2 extra cans. And then what we start doing is we bought the sales, right? So once we got kind of a little stockpile built up, we would go and we would buy, say, instead of buying 1 extra can of this, we knew it's time to buy soup. So we'd wait till soup came on, we'd buy a flat of soup. Right, so then all of a sudden you were buying soup this time, ravioli the next time, whatever it is, I don't know, just picking the dry goods that we can store, right? So when it comes to food shortages, the best insurance is definitely a well-stocked pantry. That's really what we can do to mitigate most of this, is making sure that we put as much food away as we can. Lots of ways to do it, but if you've ever heard this is one of the lines that stuck with me. It's store what you eat and eat what you store. And because most people say, well, I can stock up a year's worth of food. I'm just going to go buy 50-pound bags of rice and 50-pound bags of beans, and I'll just eat beans and rice. And when I get tired of that, I'll eat rice and beans, so.
Lentils, throw some lentils in there.
But how miserable would it be, if when we both ended up getting laid off at one time, when we had to survive on the food we had in our pantry, if all we had to eat was beans and rice. Now, we could do it if we had to, but you might as well have the stuff on hand that you already eat, right? And so making the food journal and then starting to copy can, that's the big way to start adding to it and to get the food that you actually like. My grandmother was like that. She would go and she would buy 2 or 3 cans of something. She loved those meatballs, they come in a green can and they taste like dog food, She loved them, so she'd always make sure she'd have a few extras on hand, right? That's what we do. We just buy a few extras so we make sure we have them. So I wrote, let me see how many we got. 12 tips. Real quick though, there's two things. First off, where we start, oh, I didn't give you this for my notes, I'm sorry. I tell you like you can see them right there and you can't, so it's one of them nights. So the first thing is don't run out to Costco and buy a pallet of food because Tim said so. That's not what I'm saying. So don't go home and tell your significant other that I said go to the biggest Costco you can find and come home with a trailer, because it's just going to put you in debt and then you're going to regret it, right? You're going to want to sell it like the guy sold his generator the day after a power outage because you spent too much to get rid of the fear, and then all of a sudden, and then you're all set. So you don't want it to hurt yourself financially. You don't want to spend more than you can afford, right? Everything you do should make your life better, and spending too much money doesn't make our life better, right? So we end up, because part of being prepared is having a little bit of money, not overspending, right? So being prepared and having just a little extra in the bank account helps. So in some of these you'll be like, yeah, I've been doing that since before Tim was alive, and that's okay. So shop sales, that's the first one. We've done that a lot. We used to buy, I always joked, I'm going to pick on you, hun, because you're sitting right up here. But I always said she has a clearance radar. So when we walk into the store, I won't do what I do, but I'd usually make a beeping noise when we'd see the clearance rack. But the reason is because, but I joke with her, but that's because that's what we built our pantry on clearance stuff for years. You know, we would go in and we'd be like, well, we don't eat that soy sauce, but there is 4 jars of it, so let's buy it and take it home. And we'd learn to like it. But then eventually we realized, hey, if we wait till the stuff we like comes on sale, buy that, bring it home, we're better off, right? So shop the sales first. That helps you extend your dollar just a little more. And right now, I think we could all extend our dollar just a bit more. Sorry, guys. Next, you guys ever see at the IDA? Quite often, when you go in the front door, they have I call it their loss leader, whatever that front item is on the front of their. So we've bought tuna, beans. I'm trying to think. There's usually 5 or 6 that they rotate through. So keep an eye on their stuff. We've done really well with going in. Usually they have a limit of 4 or something. So go in and buy whatever they have. It's a really good deal, and you're in there anyway, and it's somewhere local. That's another one that we do. Co-op, they have is it the 10 for 10 sale? Yeah, see everybody, yeah.
The warehouse sales go on, is it 3 or 4 times a year? The big yellow flyer.
And they're usually, because one thing I always found about co-op is it's regular price sometimes is a little bit on the steep side without being mean, but when they're on sale, I guess everything's on the steep side right now, but when they're on sale, they end up, that 10 for 10 or the 10 sale is usually pretty good. That's another one that we've used before. Now, here's a negative tip. Costco, don't buy your canned goods at Costco. I have priced everything in cans at Costco, and I've never found a deal at Costco in cans that I couldn't get somewhere else cheaper. So dry goods, sure, but canned goods, their price is like buying it at the like Dollarama. You know how they have the small cans for like $1.25? You're like, that's really good. And then you figure it out, if you bought a regular size can, it'd be $43, you know, because their prices aren't good. So Costco's like that. Costco's great for some things. Canned goods, not so much. Buy in bulk. So this one can be hard, but sometimes, like, it's been a couple years since I've seen it, but the IGA had those case lots of soup that they were selling. When you can do it, that's the way to do it. Everybody's shaking your head like you know, so that's good. I like that. Anybody ever been to the Cash and Carry in Lloyd? Do you guys know where that is? Not? Yeah. So it took us a while to find it. And again, it's one of those places that isn't always a good deal, but if you go in and look around, you can find some stuff that's pretty good. And that's on the north side of the tracks. It's on the rough side of the tracks, you know, but but it's not bad at all. Local suppliers. So this would be more like for meat and that kind of thing. But one of the big things we'll talk about a little bit is trying to support local, because one of the big areas, everybody always pictures that crazy prepper of the guy alone in his bunker with his radio and his gun, but being prepared means having a community. And part of that is living in a town and supporting the local businesses. And to me, you build relationships that way. You create a circular economy where the money you spend goes to me and then to her and to him. To me, that's one of the best ways to build a resilient community, is to spend money locally, the best you can, for sure. And then, you know, in the summer, people bring in Tabor corn, and we try to buy, you know, big bags of that if you can. Corn's one of those, either freeze it or can it. We'll talk about that. Do you know the time of year when everybody's selling potatoes on Facebook? Yeah. So sometimes that can be a good deal on potatoes, but find those type of things. The Hutterites, we've bought a lot. Again, you got to watch their prices, but I've gone up and bought like 50 pounds of carrots and brought them home and canned them. If you buy them that way, sometimes it works out to be a good deal. Plus, you know where the veggies come from, and they're fresh anyway. And one of our big hacks that we've used for a lot of years is Amazon subscriptions. So now what we do with that, in the States, they have food and different things. Up here, it's more toiletries and stuff like that. So what we do is we go through, we did this, how long's that been? 4 or 5 years since we started it? Yeah, so we went around to all the different big box stores where we'd get our groceries, and we priced things like soap and toothpaste and deodorant and shampoo, and we found the absolute lowest price at each store, so we'd know. Then we went home and we looked in Amazon, and if you subscribe to things, so get it sent to you automatically every month or every 3 months, things like that, they give you like a 10% discount. So by the time you figure in their kind of low price for some of that stuff and the even lower price for subscriptions, all of a sudden it makes pretty good sense for some of that stuff. And then when it shows up, what happens is you put it on autopilot, right? So we get things, so if we use 2 packages of toothpaste a month, we'll put a 4-pack on for the subscription. So then every month you're gaining 2 packages of toothpaste. And then all of a sudden you have 12 extra bulk packs in the basement, and you're like, okay, now I can shut it off. I have a lot, right? And what's good about it is the kids can come and shop in our pantry too, because we have adult kids who live in their own house and like to come in and get stuff. So, but that's been one of our big hacks that we've done a lot of. And it helps because it's stuff that you wouldn't probably buy around here anyway, a lot of it, and it's just little cheap things that you don't miss $4 for a stick of deodorant. So if you put them on a constant subscription, they just show up, and all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 extra sticks, and it helps, right? Because if you run into hard times when you don't have any money, all of a sudden you've got all that extra at home that you can use and not have to worry about. So, what's that? Oh yeah. Well, that might come down to that too, right? So.
I'm thinking it's a better investment than cash given inflation.
Oh yeah.
If you buy it before the dollar goes up and the price of the deodorant goes up, your wage didn't go up.
So I've actually done that on quite a few items. So what you can do on Amazon is you can go back and look at every invoice you've ever spent, and it'll scare you maybe if you, but what's cool about it is sometimes we'll say, I think that price has gone up. So we can look, because they're sneaky that way, but all stores do it. It's not like it's just Amazon, but whatever. So we'll go back and look, and sure enough, that deodorant will have snuck up 17 cents a stick. Now you might not think that's a lot, but all of a sudden it's cheaper at Walmart. So then you can cancel it and pick it up at Walmart, So you can go back through and look. Like I was looking for a battery charger the other day, and I went back to 2016. So you can go back. The invoice will be there. You just might not be able to click on the item if they've discontinued it, but you can see how much you spent on it in the picture. So kids, sorry guys. So kids treats, things that they like, especially when they're little. See, I'm going to make Charlie right embarrassed because she's looking at me. There's another one here. Where is she?
She's hiding.
Oh, wave, Alice. She's way underneath the table back there. So again, if something happened where you couldn't get to the grocery store because of maybe like an ice storm like we had last year, and you're stuck home with the kids. Do you guys remember the early days of COVID when we were, yeah, I see that. Look, yep. And all of a sudden everybody was buying board games, and then divorce rates went up and kids moved out. And no, but that's the way it goes, right? Kids, they always say happy wife, happy life. I think it's more happy kids, because if they ain't happy, you're miserable, right? So one way to take a little bit of stress out of a bad situation is to make sure you have some stuff the kids like. So, I mean, I know that goes without saying, but don't forget about things like granola bars or gummy snacks or whatever, just the dry goods that can sit on the shelf for a while, and buy a couple extra packs of those. And don't forget our fur babies either. So we've got a pretty well-stocked pantry in the basement, and we keep a fair bit of extra dog food down there as well. So one thing people don't realize is the stuff they call dry dog food can actually go rancid fairly quick, because it's got a lot of fats and oils in it, and it turns like you're like, I don't think my guys will eat that. Mine will barely eat dog food as it is. So canned food's another good way for that, because you can copy can that as well, right? So again, if you're dogs eat a 24 pack, maybe buy a couple singles each time you go as well. They're like 79 cents. Put 2 extras in your cart, throw them up on the shelf, and don't worry about it. But remember to rotate. You guys know first in, first out at the grocery store, same thing. Otherwise you end up like I do when I go downstairs. I'm like, that corn's from 2017. I think we probably should eat it, you know? So, so that's water, dry goods. The next is the freezer. So the first thing I wanted to show you is, well, I would say the freezer is the biggest investment that most of us make because meat ain't cheap anymore, right? So this guy here, I bought 3 of these. These are on Amazon. I couldn't find them anywhere else. They're called a Govee freezer alarm, and I throw them down in my freezer. They're $35 a piece. They run on 3 AA batteries, and they run on Wi-Fi. So I can check when I'm in Tennessee speaking in April, I can go on my phone and look at the temperatures in my freezer, and it lets me know, hey, you know, that side of beef we bought, we're still good, because that's a big investment, right? So that's a good way to kind of protect that investment, because again, we put a lot of money in meat at times, and if you go and you get a really good deal, like if you go in and say chicken's on clearance, you don't want to come home and end up having a bad day, right? Now, something else you can do, which is kind of cool, they call it a poor man's freezer alarm. So you can take a jug of water and freeze it, throw a quarter inside, and then put the lid on. Maybe put a little more water on it. And what that does is, if your freezer thaws while you're away, the quarter melts, drops to the bottom of the water, and then say the power comes back on and it freezes again, you can look and see that the quarter is in the bottom of the water. So all of a sudden, you know, I probably can't eat that because it thawed enough that the quarter went all the way down. So if you can't afford it. And the other thing is, in your freezer, keep it full. You guys probably know this, but an empty freezer works harder, so it costs you more in power. That's a great place to store extra water bottles. So if you have extra space, fill up some of your 2 liters, throw them in there, then you got ice packs for an injury, or bring them out and let them thaw out. But the poor man's freezer alarm, I love that. I don't know where I heard that, but years ago, and it works, because last thing you'd want to do is eat a bunch of food that thawed out and then refroze. You could have a bad day. So from there, anybody can? I was going to say, I bet Lois is going to put her hand up. I have my suspicions that Lois canned at one time or another. So, yeah, oh, there you go. I knew it, yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about my canning journey, because is there anybody in here who hasn't canned that might want to learn someday maybe? Okay, cool. All right. So first off, if you're up for it someday, I'll do either a canning workshop, or people can just come over and I can teach you, because it's really intimidating at first, but it's not hard. So back before I met Becky, I lived in a little 2nd floor apartment, and I don't know, this was when I first started getting into prepping, and I'm like, I just want to go so I went and picked a flat of strawberries, and then I went and bought a bunch of cucumbers from a farmer's market for dirt cheap. So I went and found my grandmother, and I said, hey, Nan, do you know how to can? And she's like, yeah. So I said, can you teach me? Sure. She was in her early 80s now. She just passed away a couple of months ago at 100, so she did good. And so she said, sure, I'll come down. So then I went, because I said I was a broke, just out of college guy, had no money. So then I went to Mom and Dad. I'm like, did you get any canning jars? Because that's what we do, right? Mom says, I think there is some. She said, I think they're in the old basement. So let me paint you a little picture about where the old basement is. So when you went down to Mom and Dad's basement, it's a normal cement floor, and you look over and there's a 4-foot by 4-foot hole beat through the rock concrete. That's the old house that's 100 years old. It has 4-foot high ceilings. That used to be where Dad had his workbench. I'm not really sure how he did it. She said, I think they're underneath Dad's old workbench. You go in there and it smells like rotten dirt and full of spiders. And it's dark and all get out. And guess where they were? All the way to the back of the old workbench. So I was committed at this point, and I had to crawl all the way in. Yep, and I pulled it out, and it was covered in spider webs and old dirt. They had been in there for 30 years, I'm sure. But they were still just as good as a day. Maybe 2 of them broke when I boiled them. But I mean, they had, you get that failure rate with them anyway. So she taught me we canned strawberry jam, and we canned sweet mix pickles and mustard pickles. I don't even eat pickles. I'm not sure why I did it. And but I knew I had 35 jars on the shelf, and I told Mom, I said, there, I'm good, I'm prepared. I didn't know what I was prepared for, but I was sure I was prepared. But the cool thing was, I made a step, you know, I was heading in the right direction. I knew what I needed to do. I just didn't know how far I had to go. And sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? Because we're like, I've told that story so many times. I thought I was absolutely convinced I was prepared because I had strawberry jam and pickles on my shelf. So
Prepared for company. There you go.
I was prepared for something. I could live off it for a couple of days. It wouldn't be very, you know, nourishing, I don't think. But so canning is one of those things, you know, everybody always tells a story that they knew some grandmother who either blew a hole in her roof, blew a hole through her stove, or took her hand off with a pressure canner. And they're like, don't do it, it's scary. Or you know, somebody who canned meat on an open fire in a pot and ended up getting sick. That was the stories they always told. But if you follow the book and you're safe, I was going to say dead simple. That's probably not the right term, is it? No, it's probably simple. You know, it is. So start with things like high acid foods. So pickles are good because anything you use vinegar in, nothing can grow in it. So you can never get any, botulism is the thing you're worried about. We're not going to go deep into that, but that's just the thing that everybody's scared about. So high sugar or high acid. So pickles, really anything pickled, jams, jellies, tomatoes. Thank you. I knew there was another one. Salsa, you got to be careful. I've canned salsa, even with peppers in it.
Careful with tomatoes.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, what were you saying?
They grow low acid tomatoes.
Yes. So you do have to be careful because if you buy some of those fancy, you know, the hybrids or whatever, that's exactly it. They can be more of a medium acid tomato, and you have to either add vinegar to them or don't can with them. But that's, yeah, I forgot about that. It's true. But that's where you can start. You can start with that. And then if you want, one year for Christmas, maybe a dozen years ago, she surprised me with what's called a pressure canner. So that looks like a pot, but it kind of looks like a bomb too. So it goes on, the lid snaps down, and then it has weights on it, and then it shoots steam out. So you can can things like meat and potatoes and corn. So we've done that on and off for many years. Never ever had one can go bad. You follow the procedures, you put the right weight on top, and you know the amount of time to can it, and that's it. It's, yeah, if you can put water, you know, if you can put juice in a glass and put a lid on it, you can can. So it's not hard. So if you want to learn, I'll teach you, Kelly. No problem. So, and it gives me an excuse to get my canner out. So I was at, yeah, I sound like an old lady anyway, but I was at Home Hardware one day and there was a lady in there and she's like, I'm getting ready to pressure can, but my pressure canner hasn't shown up from Amazon yet. So I didn't know her from Adam, but I was like, oh, this is my day to shine. I said, good. I said, I have a pressure canner, you can borrow it. She goes, but you don't know me. I said, I don't care. I said, even if you don't bring it back, it's worth it to me because I know somebody's going to go use it to can. Well, it turned out it was, you know, Calico the plumber. It was his wife. So she used it, did all her canning and brought it back. And I was like, yes, this is great. So yeah, that's what I like. I just like to see people learn the skills and, you know, if I could afford it, I'd give everybody a pressure canner. It'd be fun, but because everybody gets so scared of them, right? It's one of those things that, like I said, every time I bring it up on my podcast, somebody will say, oh, I know somebody who lost a finger from a pressure canner or who blew up their stove. But those were the old ones. And anyway, a lot of times it's just urban myths or wives' tales or that kind of stuff, you know, but we'll skip a couple spots for you so we don't. Okay. So, dehydrating. Does anybody dehydrate? I see another one. What do you dehydrate? Or what have you done?
Tomatoes, fruits, mushrooms.
Mushrooms. Ooh, I like that. What do you do?
Everything from jerky and fruit, make your own fruit leather. Chewy jujube things with zucchini simmered in fruit juice.
Is that good? Sounds good.
Zucchini.
Yeah. So the answer is no then. She's just trying to be polite. Okay.
You know, now I'm going to dehydrate sourdough starter.
Really? That actually sounds really good.
Constitutes very well.
Sure. Because yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now you got me. Yeah, that's I got to look into that. I like that.
Like I've been cooking up, in fact, I've got focaccia here.
Oh, you have to. Yeah.
Yeah, actually,
I've heard about it.
kale,
Yeah.
I've dehydrated celery really well.
Okay.
A couple of years I've had incredible celery, and then you can.
I didn't think celery was anything but water and string. I didn't know you could. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because you can celery powder and stuff too.
Turkey stuffing and stuff like that. So Save the good stuff for when you want the crunch in your salad or your snacks, and then put the cheap stuff in here.
When I was growing up, we didn't have a dehydrator. What my grandmother did was she would dip her apple slices in lemon juice, and then she'd string them on yarn or thread, and we'd hang them up in the attic and forget about them for 3 years. And then I'd go in one day.
Need a lot of cinnamon.
Oh, you'd put them in and you'd be like, I think I forgot to put my teeth in, because you would just sit there and gum them all day, but you couldn't tell. I mean, I was too stupid to know. I ate a bag of cookies one time that I found in the attic that'd been there from the year before. So that tells you something about it. But yeah, the old apples, they're great. And we tried them a few times, remember? And they turned out okay. You just, in a dry, low humidity environment, they'd work better here, but they're good. It's an easy way to do it. You can dehydrate in your oven too, especially if it goes low enough, down to 180's decent if you can get it there. And then take a wooden spoon and put it in the door and close the door against it so it doesn't heat up too much. It's a poor man's dehydrator. A couple of trays, put some parchment paper, and you can do it that way. It's not ideal, but if you don't have a dehydrator, you make it work, right? The next thing I was going to tell you about was backyard chickens, or chickens in general. And we made a incubator one year, didn't we, babe? Yeah, so when the kids were just little, we didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. I guess it'd be nickels now because they did away with the pennies, right? But so they were maybe about $100 for an incubator, and I maybe had $10 to my name at that time. So I thought, hey, we'll have to build one. So plywood, plexiglass, a thermostat out of a hot water tank, an old computer fan, a 100-watt light bulb, some wire cloth, and some hinges. And we had about the same hatch rate as you'd get from a store-bought one, and it was on my first try. So you can, a lot of times it's just, if you don't have the money, just look at it for a bit and think, how can I build this? Because there's a good guy, his name's Paul Wheaton, and he talks about permaculture, and that's the idea that everything's a system. So learning from a system. And he always says that the more constraints you have on you, the more creative you have to be. And so for us, we had no money, so I had to be really, really creative when it came to building things because we just couldn't. But we did, and we made it work, and we hatched a couple of batches of chickens out of it. But yeah, so chickens, that's one of those things I was going to mention because right now we can't have chickens here, which, yes, I know you know that. So I want that to change. That's one of the things I would love to see. Not roosters. Everybody's like, chickens make noise. Well, no, roosters make noise, and they're the things that'll wake you up, and they'll make you almost as mad as when I'm outside blowing snow at 6:30 in the morning, so it's just one of those things. But anyway, so Dawn and I have talked about it a little bit, and I've talked to Chantel at the pet store. Anyway, it would be nice to see a responsible bylaw in our town so that we could have a few chickens because, and I know Curtis is like, not something else to look after, but now we didn't get hit by it here this year, but a bunch of my friends down in the States, eggs went from $2 a dozen to $10 a dozen in a day. So it would be great because chickens love compost, Lois. Yeah, I know you do. Lois knows compost and birds really well, so I always appreciate her. But yeah, so it's one of those things that it gives you just a little more independence and self-reliance when you have just a few chickens. Sure, you got to come up with some chicken feed, but in a pinch, you can let them eat your grass. You can give them the clippings from your lawn. I've done that. How much do we throw out every week in our compost, right? So they love, yes, they do. So, all right, yeah, that you brought it up. I'm going to mention it. So when we were,
I used to cook them just to watch them run around.
so
They love spaghetti noodles.
we used to, when we were first, we weren't even married yet. We were just living together, and we lived up on the top of a hill, and our chicken coop was at the bottom of the hill, and we let them free range. And she would come out and she'd holler, come on, chickens, babies, come on, baby. And they'd come running to her. And yeah, but again, this was almost everything we've ever learned came from being absolutely broke at one time or another. True story. I always say that abject poverty is a great motivator. And so there were times when we couldn't afford to go to the feed store and buy a bag of feed. So we'd look in the pantry and see what we had. And we had lots of noodles. And so she'd cook up a big pot of noodles and give them to the chickens. And they thought it was the best treat they ever had in their entire life. They'd run around, with the noodles, and it was so sweet. So again, you make do with what you have, right? So that's where we came from with that. And the thing is, almost everything I'm talking about used to be called life, right? All of our parents and grandparents had pantries that were full of food, right? Because they knew, maybe even going back 3 generations, that if you didn't have food in the pantry, you might not have, you might not be able to eat through the winter, right? I mean, the Ukrainians that settled here, the pioneers that come out, the early ranchers, all of them knew we got to set food aside to get through the winter. Now today, we got to set food aside long enough to get us to Walmart. But I mean, and I am not a person who wants to scare people ever. I don't think that's what I do. I want to encourage people. But what happens if you do go to Walmart one day and they don't have the stuff you need? Having a well-stocked pantry can get you by for a week, 2 weeks, whatever you want to do. If you start out building copy canning so you have 1 week's worth of food, right? The Canadian government says 72 hours. They say if you have 3 days worth of food and supplies, you're perfect. Well,
Trust us.
yes, trust us. Sorry, I didn't want to go down the government.
We're all thinking it.
Yeah, no, it's good. Hey, no.
We're all thinking it. Like, yeah.
Now, the thing is, most of us, if we went into our pantry, I bet could probably scrounge up 3 days worth of food. If it was when I was living as a bachelor, it might have been soy sauce and Catalina dressing, but I could live for 3 days, right? But a week, that puts you ahead of twice what the government wants you to have. And that's just a good start. And then it gets addictive and you're like, well, if I can get a week's worth of food, and that you might think, man, a week doesn't seem like much, but when you start stocking it, a week is pretty good. And does anybody remember, and I don't want to jinx it, so I'm going to knock on wood. Do you ever remember a power outage or a local weather disaster that lasted more than a week? Kathy has, sure. And it does happen. But again, everything I do is with the odds. So for me, the average power outage is 4 hours. I know that you're like, really? That's short. But when you take all the power outages in North America every year, the average duration of a power outage is 4 hours. So for 4 hours, you really don't need much of anything, right? Now, that also means that half the power outages are more than 4 hours, but half are less. So when you look at the odds, well, okay, we can start by preparing for a 4-hour power outage. That's the way to do it. If you have a week's worth of food, that is going to have you prepared for every eventuality except the 2 that you guys put your hands up for. And they've probably been a little while, right?
I went through an ice storm. She was just a baby.
How long?
Oh, I went through too.
Yeah.
So the 60s?
Oh my God. I almost spit my pop out. That was really mean. I never would have said that. It's okay. So yeah.
Actually, it was 4 days.
Okay. So, a week.
We had our barbecue. That's what we cooked on.
There you go.
So that was here?
No, that was in Manitoba.
Sure.
And we didn't have town water then. We had our own sand points and stuff. So
That's nice.
luckily my dad, old school.
Sure.
You betcha.
Did he have a cistern pump or a?
He went down into his basement and he hooked up an old pump onto his
Isn't that cool? I love that.
And that's where we got our water. That's how I heated her bottles. Yeah.
But you got by.
We got by.
Yeah. So even that was a horrible scenario.
4 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where my dad grew up, so in Nova Scotia, at the bottom of Nova Scotia, there's this little tiny peninsula, isthmus, I don't know, it's called Digby Neck, and it's one road down, one road up. And they had in 74, the Groundhog Day storm. It was basically a hurricane in the middle of winter. And it washed out the road, it washed out the power lines, and Dad and them didn't have power for 10 days. There were some people for 14. Now, everybody still tells that story, you remember? Now, that was one storm. So if you prepare for even half of that, if you have a week's worth of food and maybe a way we'll talk a little bit about a power, how long do we have? An hour-ish? Is that what we were planning was an hour? Or do you know?
You can talk till 8 o'clock and then we'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good. I'm almost there anyway. I just didn't want to I was supposed to make a joke when I started that I'd have you out before 1 o'clock in the morning, but I forgot about that. So, so anyway, all right, let's hop over prescription. So this is a good one. This is actually one of the few I think I came up with on my own and then found out other people had after, but I was really proud of it. So at the beginning of COVID, was there anybody who there was shortages of any of the drugs they take? Yeah, so. Okay. So
Was that for medication shortage reasons, or was that for the fact that they didn't want people coming into the hospital on the regular, or?
it was shortages, yeah. So
FDA reasons, I'm not allowed to have more than 3.
Sure. Now that's a whole nother, okay. So again, I always talk about the averages. So when I talk about having extra prescriptions on hand, I'm not talking about controlled substances or insulin, which can be, that's a whole nother story that we could, I know it's tough. And I talk about the 90%, right? So the first thing you do is, if you can, fill 90 days. That's the first thing. Because one thing, we save money, right? Because if you fill 90 days, you only have to pay 1 dispensing fee. If you fill every 30, you pay 3. So number 1. Number 2, you only got to go to the store once as opposed to 3 times. So that means I'm not going to buy a Diet Coke on my way out the door or look at the chocolate bars and spend in the time, right? So that's just the first. And then the next thing you do is you go in and you ask Barb or whoever's behind the counter, you say, how early can I fill my prescriptions? So we used to have a plan that would allow us to fill a 90-day prescription 5 days early, every time, without fail. We now have a plan that'll allow us to fill 15 days early. So does anybody see where the math is going? So what I do is I set a timer on my phone or a reminder for 75 days from the day I fill my prescriptions. And on day 75 or 76, I go in and I fill my 90-day prescription again. When I do that, I take the 15 extra pills I had and I put them in the empty bottle. That becomes my surplus. I then do that in 75 days again, and I get another 15 days worth of my prescription. Then I do it again and again, and at the end of a year, you can have 2 extra months of your prescription without really spending any extra money and without needing to go in and talk to your doctor. So at the beginning of COVID, I went in and they said, so I'm on a blood pressure pill called Adress. I know it's hard to believe, I know. But so anyway, I went in and she's like, we can't get it. We want to switch you to another pill. And I'm like a generic? She goes, no, another pill. And I said, so side effects? Probably. I said, I'm good. And she's like, no, you need your pills. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go home. I'll keep checking. So I would go in every couple of weeks and check to see if they had them. And eventually I went in on a day when they could get them. So I filled up again. I was good for, at that point, about 6 months. I had built up 6 months worth of prescriptions over 3. Now, the other thing you need to make sure you do is rotate, right? So those, yes. So the
First in, first out.
Yeah, exactly. So the old pills, the ones I put in there, the next month will be the first ones I take. So, and the cool thing is, if you're filling every 75 days, when it comes down to your budget, you're not going to, sure, you're spending a little bit more each time, but if you fill 15 days early each time, you're not going to notice that so much out of your budget. So it's an easy way to just, you think, okay, every 75 days I fill, or every 85 if you have a 5-day. But that's the way we've been able to build a couple of months surplus of our prescriptions without needing to spend any extra or without talking to the doctor and say, hey, can I have an extra prescription? Because that gets weird and wonky and, they don't like, especially with, right, certain things, I'm guessing. So it is what it is. So yeah, now here's the next one. This is for a power outage. Now we don't get them that much here, but we do get them sometimes. What was the last one anybody remember? I'm going to jinx it and we'll have one tomorrow, I'm sure. But it's been about, did we have one? Oh, that was a couple years. Yeah. Yeah, that was.
Was that a day and a half?
Long time. My house was too cold.
Oh, I bet, yeah. So there's a few things, but the first thing is, like I said, the average power outage is 4 hours. So most people have like a bedside drawer or table or nightstand or something close to your bed. Throw a flashlight in there. I know that sounds so dead simple. The thing is, most people have what I call a little blackout kit all around their house, but they have a flashlight over there. They have 3 half-dead batteries in the basement, and they have a battery bank for charging their phone that has been in the truck since July, right? So the first thing you do is just bring it all together. Make sure your battery bank is charged. Make sure you have decent batteries in your flashlight and put them all on your nightside table. And you might say, why my nightside table? Well, I'm glad you asked, Tim. So the main reason is, when's the most likely chance that you're going to wake up or be in the house when it's dark? Probably when you're in bed, right? So if you're outside or in the living room and it's daylight, you're going to be able to move around and find the stuff. But it's a central place where it's the most likely to be needed. So pull it out there. Now, the next thing was what you said about cooking, because I don't know about you guys, but if I don't get my coffee, I'm not a real great guy to be around for an hour or two. So, and there's something about when you're cold from a power outage about having a hot beverage, right? So coffee's great. So figure out a way, whether it's coffee or tea or a hot toddy, or figure out a way that you can heat something up and drink it because it's going to make you feel better. Figure out a way to cook, figure out a way to stay warm. Now, there's a list of 10 items that I give Donna that they're Amazon links. You can take a picture with your phone or I can email you. And anyway, the one that's the most expensive on there is called a Little Buddy heater. They look like this. You can buy them at the U.S.A. though, so you don't have to get them on Amazon. I just put the links there so you can look at them. They take propane. They take the 1 pound propane canisters. They're technically safe to use indoors. I would still say, no, 100%. You can shake your head if you want, but you're wrong. It's okay. So you can open the window. I would still say to do it, but they're absolutely certified to be used indoors, just the Little Buddy ones. But just crack your window to be safe and have a carbon monoxide detector because then you'll know. But yeah, it's one of those things people get really nervous about, and I understand because sometimes they smell a little. But when you need to heat, the other thing is heat a small space. Everybody's like, I need a generator to run my furnace to heat the whole house. You don't. Create, you might get cozy and comfy with your family and friends, but only heat your bedroom. Or if you only have one big room, put a tent in the living room and put a little heater in there. If you have a camping, use your camping gear, but remember, be safe with it, right? So that's the other thing. Now, here's the thing. Again, everybody says, I'd love to have a full house generator to run everything, right? At least, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just a geek with that, but it'd be cool. You're like, I don't know, what are the things you want to make sure keep running when the power goes out?
I'd love to, but the expense.
Yes, that's exactly. So fridge, right? Fridge, freezer, furnace, and a pump if you have water in your basement, right? If you could run those 4 things, you probably get by for a few days without having to worry about it, right? Well,
your freezer's probably good for what, 3 if it's full?
Yep, exactly. 2 if it's half empty and 3 if it's full. So here's the thing. Every one of those, unless it's an electric furnace, will run off of a 1500 watt outlet, something you can just plug into the wall. Your furnace, you'll need to get rods there to put, some of them are hardwired. You need to get them to put a plug-in on it, but that's another, anyway. So all 4 of those can run off of a single thing in the wall. So anybody know what an inverter is? Yeah, okay. So for $150 on Amazon, instead of going out and buying the $1,000 generator like I did, you can buy a $150 inverter. Just about everybody here has a car. Everybody hopefully tries to keep the gas tank relatively full. So here's how it works. It's pretty cool. It's just a little box. You hook it up to your battery, 2 little terminals on your battery, and you turn your car on. And you now have an outlet on your car for $150 that you can plug any one 1500 watt item in your house. So you run an extension cord in through the doggy door, and now you can plug your fridge in. Run your fridge for an hour. Don't open the door. It's good for 6, 8, 10 hours. So what you're going to do is you're going to rotate. You're going to run your fridge for an hour. You're going to run your freezer for an hour. You're going to run your pump for an hour if you need to, and then maybe your furnace for 2 or 3 hours. So you cycle through. Now, is it ideal? No, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper than buying a great big generator. So you get yourself just one of these little inverters, plug it into the battery on your car, and if you keep your car full, so the average car fuel tank is 60 liters, the average car burns 2 liters an hour, so you could run idle in your driveway for about 30 hours if you had to. So most power outages, if they're worse than that, you can figure out a place to get some gas. Then you don't have a big generator that is hard for you to haul out from the garage, right? Or that kind of stuff. You don't have to deal with all these big 220 wires. It's just a real simple, inexpensive, with quotation marks around it, compared to buying a big generator. So that's the best cheapskate way of doing it that I found over the years. So that works really good. And then, so I made a list of 10 things. Did you guys get the list? I'll grab one. Yeah, that's okay. Oh, right here, this one. So I always said that everybody wants, some people are like, well, just tell me a couple things to buy so I feel better. So, because everybody wants to have something at home to feel just a little bit better. So I made that list. You don't have to buy anything on it. But so I'll tell you why I put each item on here, and then we'll close up. And if you got questions, you can ask. But the first one's a headlamp. So Charlie, do I like my headlamps? Yeah. So what I'll do is I keep a headlamp, which is just a flashlight that straps to your head. I keep it in my nightside table. And then when the power goes out, I take headlamps to the girls upstairs and they get to wear them too. And the beauty of a headlamp, of course, is number one, wherever you look, the light points. So you're not like trying to remember, you know what I mean? So where you're looking is where you're walking, is where you're seeing. Then the next thing is you got two hands free because it's dark. You don't want to trip on something. And if you do trip, you want to have your hands out so you can maybe not trip, right? So headlamps are great. I think that one's like $15 or $20 on Amazon. It's a good one. We put together a kit for our kids for Christmas, and that's what was in it. And then a power bank. How many people have had the power go out and all of a sudden you're like, well, darn, my flashlight's or my cell phone's at 5%, right? That's when you're in a world of hurt because maybe sometimes TELUS has power when we have power out, sometimes they don't. So try your Wi-Fi. If you have something, you can plug it in because last time we did. But have a power bank so you can plug your phone in because unless we have an outage like the other day. Did anybody else lose their cell phone the other day? Yep. Yeah, for a full day. We were in Calgary last year when the Rogers outage happened. I was glad I didn't even talk about keeping money in your wallet, but having some cash on hand is, yeah.
Can I add an addendum to your power bank idea?
Yeah.
As far as keeping your Wi-Fi going, because like you said, tell us your phone lines have a different power draw than your house does.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have phone to the house. There may be signal. So invest in a UPS for your local modem router.
Yes.
An uninterruptible power supply. Now, your modem, your router, does not take a whole lot of power. So you can have Wi-Fi even though there's no power in the house and still be able to call out an SOS.
That's a great one. They're not that
No. Also clean up the dirty power that we have occasionally because the wind farm comes up and down and your sensitive electronics don't like the big spikes. So rather than burning out modems and stuff like that, a UPS is a really good thing. A lot of them come with a USB plug on them now, so you can plug your cell phone into it, recharge, things like that. It's not that expensive to get one that's good for several hours.
They're a couple hundred dollars to start.
Bucks,
yeah, and they just look like
lead acid battery. Now they sell them lithium ion, and they can actually be about the size of a surge protector.
Yeah, they're not real. Yeah, and they'll see, like you said, in a lot of times you could run your TV off it too because TVs are not. Yeah, exactly. If you had a small little, grab the TV from the camper or whatever, and a lot of them are 30 to 70 watts an hour. If you have 1,000 watt, that's a bigger one. But if you had 1,000 watts, you could run for 10 hours. So,
there's also that little
yes.
camping stove where you can feed it twigs.
Yes, I love those.
Aren't those amazing? And it will actually charge your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think, how brilliant is that?
One of my snow customers has one of those.
Camping in the back country or something like that. I think that's a really
has like a thermal electric motor or something. I forget, but it works. You guys ever see those fans that sit on top of wood stoves and they don't have any batteries in them? When the heat turns on, they have like a little, I forget there's a fancy name for an old-fashioned motor in them, and they work on the same principle as that. They're really cool. The little buddy heater, we talked about that guy. Anybody have a way to make coffee at home that doesn't necessarily require electricity, like a coffee maker? Yeah. French press, anybody do French press? Okay, I love it. Yeah, I got a Stanley one. So I bought, she got it for me for Christmas. It's like the green old style Stanley.
Stanley makes a French press.
Yeah.
That'll probably last for the kids.
It will. It's like $70. So you can get smaller ones though, right? You can get this is a 48 ounce one, but having a French press. So boil the water, dump it in. Now another one that we love is the fire spray. If you guys see that there. So I didn't talk about fires. I skipped over that. I had that in my notes. But so a couple years ago, we found this at Costco. And it's like fire extinguisher in a spray can. So if you can use hairspray, it works like a fire extinguisher. Now, it's not a replacement for a good fire extinguisher because those big things are great. They work well. The problem is they're complicated. Kids are like, what do I do? Now, they can turn them on by accident, but if you put them in front of a fire, they might not know what to do. So I took Charlie and Alice out. We did a review video on them. That's my twins. They were 10 at the time, and I started the fire in the backyard in a pot, and I said, now put it out. I didn't give them any training. They picked up the thing, they sprayed it, and put the fire out. We keep them for the barbecue as well. They're biodegradable, they're liquid. They'll last 5 years. They don't need to be recertified, and after 5 years, you're supposed to throw them out. They work past 5 years, but they're guaranteed for 5 years. Now, the cool thing is, they're about $20 a can, so that's cheaper than fire extinguishers that we just bought for the daycare. And so you can buy 3 or 4 and keep them where you need them. one under your sink, one by your furnace, one by your barbecue, and they work great. I think they're $21.99 at Home Hardware. I checked last night, so Rod can get them in for you if you want. I love them. They're because the thing about fire extinguishers is usually they're expensive, so you might buy one, and then you put it somewhere, and it might be where you need it, it might not be, or you may never get it serviced. And what you end up having is like the white fire extinguisher we found at the daycare when we started renovating. It was 40 years old and it sat there. Yeah, well, you know, right? So that's what I like about these cans is they're not super expensive. You don't feel bad about buying 3 or 4 of them and putting them everywhere. Redundancy, right? Rechargeable batteries, that's a good one. So if you're looking for a good price on rechargeable batteries, EDL on Amazon is a good middle of the road. They're not super expensive, and I've done tests on them. They're pretty good. I use what they call Eneloop batteries. They're quite expensive, but they're really good batteries. So if you want to, they're like $3 a piece for AA's, but they'll last for 2,000 charges. And we talked about the freezer alarm. So this is called a GOVEE, G-O-V-E-E. That's on the bottom. And the last one is a good can opener. Because if you have cans and you don't have a can, anybody seen the meme? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. There's a husband and a wife in an underground bunker, and you can see bombs going off everywhere. And she says, "Henry, I told you to bring a can opener." And you can just imagine, right? So there's a can opener on Amazon. It's made in the U.S. It's called Easy Does It. It's about $20, and it's made to last for a lifetime. We've got a couple of them because yes, it was your idea, because she got tired of hearing me swear in the kitchen because we'd buy cheap can openers. The only thing... Yes, so I did some research because I'm a geek like that, and turns out there's a company that wanted to send all their production to China. They did. Their American workers said, "No, we're not doing it." They bought the company, reopened the factory in Cincinnati, and they make them in the U.S. For $20, can openers. Do you remember the old Swing Away can openers? Same company. So they used to be made in Canada, or in the U.S., and then they sold them out. And so Easy Does It's the one that replaced it. And like I said, you buy 1 or 2 of those and you're good for life. So that was the list. I had a list of 10 tips for you as well. They're self-explanatory. I had them, it's like store water, it's free, eat what you store what you eat. And yeah. So I know I told you it was going to be like a fire hose. Sorry for spraying you in the face all night, but I skipped a lot because I wanted to make sure I covered the things that were important to me. So, and hopefully the most pertinent to you guys. So thank you.